Florence De Cu. The scent of linseed oil clung to the room like a ghost. Even when the windows were open, even when he left the door ajar to let the wind pass through the dusty brickwork, the smell remained. The studio was not large, but every object in it, every cloth, brush, chisel, and palette, had been touched by that scent, as though the very act of creation had seeped into the bones of the place. Florence De Cu stood in silence, barefoot on the cool stone floor. His eyes were fixed on the canvas before him, an angel unfinished. The wings were fractured, paint smudged into violent streaks of gold and rust, like torn cloth stained with old blood. The face was a blank oval, still untouched. He had scraped it off 3 times. Each attempt felt dishonest. Each outline too kind, too human. In the far corner, a crucifix leaned against the wall, but the Christ was missing from it. Florence had removed the figure months ago. The wood remained, dark and heavy, still bearing the impression of pierced limbs. He turned toward the back table. On it lay his instruments, brushes, scalpels, a needle. There was a basin of water that hadn't been changed in days, and beside it, a jar of red ochre and 2 stained cloths, one white, one black. Above the table hung a print of Michelangelo's The Last Judgment. It had yellowed over time, but the agony of the figures still lived in it. The damned twisted toward hell with hands outstretched. The blessed rose in weightless arcs. Florence looked at it every day before he worked. It was his reminder. Of judgment. Of ascent. Of art as penance. A knock. Then another. Soft. Cautious. He moved quietly to the door and opened it halfway. Outside stood a girl no older than 19. She wore a heavy cloak pulled tight around her. Her face, though pale, held the distinct softness of someone who trusted easily. She looked up into his eyes. "You said you'd paint me," she said. Florence stepped aside. "Yes. Come in." She hesitated, then entered. He shut the door behind her. She sat on a low wooden stool. He handed her a warm drink, spiced wine steeped with dried rosemary. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elise." He nodded. "Do you believe in beauty, Elise?" She smiled faintly. "I suppose so." "No. I mean the kind that hurts. That stays with you. That strips everything false from your bones." She looked uncertain. I don't know." He moved behind her and gently untied her cloak. "Don't worry. You will." Elisa's body lay on the table like a statue half-carved. He had posed her as if she were falling upward, one arm reaching, the other drawn across her ribs. Her eyes were open, glassy and pale. Around her, he had placed white lilies in a circle, their petals speckled with blood. A single candle burned above her face. The incision had begun just below her sternum. He had opened her like an offering, slow and reverent. The brushstrokes that followed were from her own blood, blended with oil and red chalk. Her clavicle gleamed with gold leaf. He had stitched her lips closed and painted a teardrop onto one cheek. Before the first cut, she had asked, "Will it hurt?" Florence had answered honestly, "Only until it's beautiful." He'd spoken to her as he worked, and she had trembled at first. But her fear passed into something else, a dazed silence, a trance. By the time her blood stopped moving, she looked like she had fallen asleep in prayer. He stood over her now, eyes damp with awe. "Sanctum pulchritudinem," he whispered. "Sanctified beauty." From the mirror behind the table, a shadow stirred. He turned quickly, no one. Only the canvas, and the print of the Last Judgment looming like a silent witness. Then came the voice. Soft. Inside his head. "You've begun well, Florence." He fell to his knees. His hands shook. He pressed his fingers together and began to pray, not to God, but to the image of the angel he had painted in his youth. The one he dreamed of at night, faceless, descending. "Make me your hand," he said. "Make this worthy." The silence that followed was not empty. It watched him. He returned to the confessional that evening. "What troubles you, my son?" came the familiar voice. Florence knelt in the dark. "I've taken a life," he said. "But I did not steal it. I shaped it." The priest was silent. "She was ordinary. But I made her eternal. She'll be remembered in paint. In silence. In the holy ache of awe. What you speak of," the priest said carefully, "is not redemption, it is corruption." "No," said Florence. "You just can't see it yet." The second came a week later, Julian Cord, a skeptic philosopher who once debated Florence on faith. Florence met him on the street, under the statue of St. Bartholomew. "You still write those essays?" Florence asked. Julian smirked. "Still painting your pretty little tragedies?" Florence smiled. "Come. Let me show you one." Julian sat tied in an iron chair. Florence stood behind him, brushing white powder across his face like a mask. "You know what they did to Bartholomew, Julian?" "No. But I'm guessing you'll tell me." "They flayed him. Peeled the skin from his body like a scroll." Julian chuckled, "Despite the ropes. That's a myth." Florence leaned in. "So was the angel that passed over Egypt. And yet there were cries in every house." Florence's blade was thin, surgical. The first incision was behind the ear, tracing the jawline. Julian gritted his teeth. "I will not scream," he said. "You already are," Florence whispered. "You just don't hear it yet." He peeled the skin from Julian's left cheek with care, exposing the raw red beneath like a living fresco. He worked slowly. With every cut, he murmured a verse. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow." When it was done, Julian sat slumped, face half flayed, arms broken and shaped into the pose of the thinker. Florence painted the blood pooling at his feet with hues of violet and crimson. The piece he titled, "The Denier's Reflection." More followed. A painter who forged commissions. A priest who covered for another. A merchant who sold broken icons to the poor. Each one chosen. Each one posed. Each one transformed. Florence's illusions worsened. He would wake to see hands crawling from beneath the floorboards. Hear whispers in the cracks of the paint. He saw faces staring back from the marble, some familiar, some not. Satan came to him not with horns, but with eyes that mirrored his own. Sometimes he looked like Florence's father. Other times, like a weeping Christ. "Keep going," the illusion would say. "Only a few more. Then it will be finished." Florence began praying more fervently. "Deliver me from deceit," he whispered, "even if the truth burns." He confessed again. And again. Each time, the priest grew more disturbed. "You need help," the priest said once. "Worldly help." Florence only smiled. "There is no help here. Only truth. And truth is never clean." Florence's final work was called The Resurrection of the Flesh. He used his own body as the model. Cut into his own thigh. Mixed the blood with blue pigment. Painted a self-portrait with his eyes closed, mouth sewn shut, heart open and luminous. The final murder was not a stranger. It was the priest. Florence took him from the confessional, bound in his own robes. "You saw me," Florence said. "But you did nothing. You heard it all, and did not believe." The priest wept as Florence stripped him. "Please, I prayed for you. And I created for you," said Florence. He crucified the priest upon the wall. But backwards, facing it. A symbol of those who turn from truth. Then Florence picked up the final brush. And painted the Last Judgment, but inverted. In his version, the damned rose, and the blessed fell. When they came for him, he did not run. He opened the door. He welcomed them in. He stood surrounded by his works, 20 bodies, all sealed in resin and gold, posed like saints, like martyrs, like angels torn from the sky. At his trial, he was calm. I did not kill. He said. I revealed. He was executed in winter. On the gallows, he looked up at the sky. A snowflake landed on his cheek. He whispered. Art must bleed. And then the rope took him. They found one last canvas hidden in his studio. A faceless angel, weeping, its wings half burnt. Beneath it were the words. Deliver me, O Lord, from the lies that become beautiful. End.